So here it is, mid-October, and as the growth on our prairie plot winds down for the season, I'd like to give a end-of-year report card on the first year of a stormwater basin to prairie reconstruction. First is know your seeds. The idea with know your seeds is that if you know what's planted, you'll know to look for them and see how they're coming. Out on the sides of the basin, it was planted with a native seed mix specified for basin, but developed from a contractor here in Missouri, and approximately 30 to 40 forbs and about 10 grasses. So by knowing what your seeds are, you know what to look for as they come up, so you can help to protect them. The second main point is that you have to know what the weeds are. So the particular problem with the first year growth is protecting it from invasives. And we did have some early invasive growth from cattails, from reed, the common reed, some musk thistle, and by identifying these early, it was able to step in, and so they're not present on the site now. But I'll show some close-ups of three main invasives that I had problem here in suburban St. Louis. Third main advice I can give you is to advise you to walk your plot on a regular basis, and that helped me identify, see early growth of the seeds that were planted, see some of the first signs of invasion by less desirable non-natives and other invasives. And so regular walking is probably a kind of pleasant thing if you enjoy getting out and don't mind pulling a weed here and there, and take a gardener's approach to this. Last bit of advice I can offer is to let things take their course, and as my friend Les used to say, is may the best plant win. So it primarily means knowing that the plants that are either uninvited natives or tolerable non-natives that do move into the plant site, if they are reasonable plants, are not too aggressive, if they attract pollinators, are attractive to look at, and don't suppress the native growth, then they're probably okay to allow to move in. And a few examples like that might be some of the goldenrods and some of the grasses that were uninvited but still managed to help prevent erosion. And a particular example in that category is the white and the purple clover, which moved in quite heavily but did manage to stabilize and the hillside and prevent any further erosion. And they should not prove to be a particular problem for the forbs and grasses that are the native species that are much taller, should be able to move in on top of them. So here's a typical example of how dense the clover became in moving in. We're taking a chance that the forbs that were planted here will do relatively well in out-competing the clover, because already we can see several things: gray-headed coneflower here, we have some early common milkweed here. We're hoping that these will be able to step up and move past the clover, so really no action is being taken. We can see just how common the barnyard weed is. It seems to be fairly spotty, and in this view with the sun backlighting it, we can see a fair amount of foxtail and barnyard weed. not so thick that it requires specific action. There are a few surprises, and it looks like a little struggling bergamot coming along here. Mint. Fair amount of common milkweed. I'm sure the butterflies will love that. A fairly common late summer volunteer is this New England aster, since it's a flower, a native, and supports our pollinators. We'll go ahead and leave that as is. We'll let you know in later years if that was a mistake. I took a little initiative and bought plugs for swamp milkweed, and they seem to like the location. Here they are, setting seed for next year. Again, you can see how deep, dense, and widespread the clover is. It has really moved in, so if it's going to be harmful to the next year's forbs that are getting established, that'll be my second year report. The disappointment is that this was nicely covered with what they call a cover crop in May and June. Cover crop is primarily wheat and oats, and as you can see, it disappeared by midsummer, and its place is moving in. Mostly the clovers so far, what you see, but mixed in here is more Lespedeza. The Lespedeza you see here probably, I'm hoping, will be the annual variety since it's growing so low to the ground. We'll see, but I have sprayed some, but I missed this one. Here's an example of some of the uninvited guests. Pale Indian plantain. So this is its first year growth. I have about 10 of these on site, so we'll see if they're welcome or not, but they do have 6 to 10 foot stalks of flowers, and they do attract pollinators, so they are native, so that's seemed to pass the criteria needed to allow them to stay or be removed. These are the devil's beggar ticks that seem to spread all over the site. By this point, they're past the flower stage and into their developing their small burrs that are, I'm picking off my clothes after days of pulling. They're rather aggressive plants. They spread quite easily, did not respond to string trimming because they tend to just go ahead and grow again from the cut stump. So I resorted primarily to pulling these with only modest success. We'll see how much we have next year. Here's a site where there was quite a bit of the prostrate, low-growing Lespedeza, not the Sericea, but that's, as I understand, is the striata. The pile you see here is what I pulled from about a 10 square foot area, so it was quite heavy. And the reason I was concerned about it, even though I'm told it's just an annual, that A, it recedes, and B, it did suppress growth behind it. So this bare grass you see here, area without any growth, bare ground, was because of that's where I pulled the common Lespedeza up, and nothing had replaced it yet. So I'll be back again next year. These other two piles are also in a matching 10 square foot area. So they are quite heavily infested, and they do suppress growth of whatever's behind it. And yes, there are some welcome early seeds. The Coreopsis is famous for being a first year growth, but don't, I'm told, reseed too well. But as the summer winds to a close, there's still plenty evidence of the forbs that were planted here coming along nicely. So all in all, despite the invasives, I say we had a successful year. So in summary, the first year's growth seems to have done pretty well. It didn't at all match my starry-eyed dreams of tall grasses and scattered flowers through the year. First year growth is quite limited, and the main objective is to prevent invasives from coming and moving over. There's still quite a bit of maintenance involved. This has not been mown this year, but we'll certainly will have to in the spring next year, and particularly to limit the growth of the early warm season grasses and mow high enough that it doesn't interrupt the early growth of the forbs and other grasses that we had planned on. If the government sources like the Department of Agriculture says they should be experiencing about 0.25 forbs per square foot, we have met that objective, and all I can say is tune in next year and we'll see how the second year growth looks. Thanks for watching.